Ambassador Jack Miller struggled to maintain his composure as the 7 alien representatives of the United Federation of Planets stared at him with expressions ranging from shock to disgust. The conference room aboard the UF diplomatic vessel, Harmony, had fallen into complete silence after Jack had presented what humanity considered a thoughtful welcome gift, the Humanity Starter Kit. "Perhaps there has been a misunderstanding," said Vox, the blue-skinned Altarian representative, breaking the uncomfortable silence. Their 4 eyes blinked in rapid succession, a sign of distress in their species. Jack cleared his throat. "I'm not sure I understand. This is simply a collection of humanity's greatest achievements, cultural touchstones, and historical moments. We thought it would help facilitate understanding between our species." The kit, contained within a sleek titanium case emblazoned with Earth's unified flag, sat open on the center table. Inside were data crystals containing humanity's artistic masterpieces, scientific breakthroughs, cultural histories, and entertainment media spanning thousands of years. Representative Trell, a mantis-like being from Proxima Centauri, tapped a long appendage against the table. "Ambassador Miller, your starter kit contains detailed accounts of over 15,000 wars. The file labeled Greatest Military Achievements is larger than your entire collection of philosophical works." "Well, yes," Jack replied, feeling sweat form at his temples. "We thought historical accuracy was important. Your entertainment section includes 12,472 different simulations of combat scenarios," added Moore, the gaseous entity contained in a floating orb. "What you call action movies appear to be nothing more than glorified violence." Jack shifted, uncomfortably. "They're just stories." "And this," interrupted Representative Lin, a crystalline being whose sharp edges seemed to have grown even sharper during the meeting. They gestured to a particular data crystal. "This contains detailed instructions for creating over 7,000 different weapons, from primitive stone tools designed explicitly to kill to thermonuclear devices." "Those are historical records," Jack protested. "We wouldn't be the civilization we are today without understanding our past." Representative Dox, whose species communicated primarily through color changes, had turned a deep purple, widely recognized as the color of extreme alarm among Federation diplomats. "Ambassador," Vox said carefully, "in the entire history of the Federation, spanning 12,000 of your Earth years and encompassing 247 different sentient species, we have collectively engaged in fewer wars than your single planet has in its brief civilized period." Jack's mouth went dry. This first contact scenario was not going according to plan. "Perhaps most concerning," said Trell, who had been scanning through more data, "is that your medical research section contains more information about treating traumatic injuries than it does about preventing disease." "We're excellent at emergency medicine," Jack offered weakly. "Because you've had so much practice." Moore's orb flickered dimly. The Federation representatives exchanged glances loaded with meaning. Jack knew this meeting would determine humanity's place in the galactic community. Earth's admission to the Federation would mean access to technologies centuries beyond human development, solutions to climate change, disease, and energy crises. But the expressions on the alien delegates' faces suggested that humanity's application was about to be rejected. "Perhaps," Jack said carefully, "I could explain some context about human history that might help you understand." "We understand perfectly well," Vox replied, their voice unnervingly calm. "And that is precisely what concerns us." 3 days later, Jack paced the length of Earth's diplomatic quarters aboard the Harmony. The Federation Council had been in closed session since the disastrous presentation of the Humanity Starter Kit, and no amount of diplomatic wrangling had gained him access to their deliberations. "They're going to reject us," Jack muttered to his aide, Tom, who sat reviewing data on a tablet. 40 years of scanning the skies for intelligent life, 15 years of signal exchanges, 5 years of diplomatic preparation, and I blew it all in 20 minutes with a welcome package." "To be fair, sir," Tom replied, looking up, "they seemed horrified by our entire history, not just your presentation." Jack sighed. "Thanks for the pep talk." A soft chime indicated someone at the door. When it slid open, Representative Vox stood there, flanked by 2 other Federation officials Jack hadn't met before. "Ambassador Miller," Vox said, their voice carefully neutral, "the Council requests your presence." Jack straightened his uniform jacket. Has a decision been reached? It has. The walk to the council chamber felt like a march to execution. Jack rehearsed his arguments, preparing to plead humanity's case one final time. Yes, humans had a violent history, but they were evolving, learning, growing beyond their primitive impulses. The council chamber was a vast amphitheater, with representatives from hundreds of worlds seated in tiered sections. Jack was directed to a small platform in the center, where he stood uncomfortably as thousands of alien eyes studied him. The Federation High Counselor, an ancient being named Zin, whose species had evolved beyond physical form, manifested as a shimmering light. At the head of the chamber, Ambassador Jack Miller of Earth. Zin's voice resonated without seeming to come from anywhere specific. The Council has reviewed your application for Federation membership, along with the cultural package you provided. Jack braced himself for rejection. It is the decision of this Council that humanity's application be approved with special conditions. Jack blinked in surprise. Approved? A murmur ran through the assembled representatives. Yes, Zin continued. Though not for the reasons you might expect, after careful consideration, we believe the Federation needs humanity. I don't understand, Jack admitted. Vox stepped forward. Ambassador, the Federation has existed in relative peace for millennia. We have nearly forgotten what it means to face existential threats. Our scientists predict that within the next century, our galaxy will face contact with the neighboring Andromeda civilization, a potentially hostile force about which we know very little. And you think humans could help with that? Jack asked, bewildered. Your species has survived despite your tendency towards self-destruction, Zin explained. You've endured ice ages, plagues, world wars, nuclear standoffs, climate disasters, and near-miss asteroid events. You are, to put it simply, extinction-resistant. Jack wasn't sure whether to be flattered or offended. The very qualities that horrified us, Vox added, may be precisely what the Federation needs to survive the coming storm. The terms of Earth's special Federation membership became clear over the following weeks. Humanity would not receive the standard technology package granted to new members. Instead, they would serve as military consultants with limited access to Federation knowledge. They're treating us like dangerous animals they've decided to weaponize, complained General Laura Hart during the secure briefing back on Earth. The Joint Chiefs of Staff and world leaders had gathered in the United Nations complex in Geneva to hear Jack's report. More like they're treating us as the galaxy's immune system, Jack corrected. They've been at peace so long they've lost their defenses. They're terrified of this Andromeda contact. President Clark rubbed his temples. So, they want our military expertise but don't trust us with their technology? That's a raw deal. It's a foot in the door, Jack argued. And they are offering some technologies, medical advancements, clean energy solutions, agricultural improvements, just nothing that could be weaponized. Which is nearly everything, General Hart muttered. There's something else, Jack added hesitantly. They want us to create a new version of the Humanity Starter Kit, specifically focused on our defensive capabilities, strategic thinking, and military history. They're calling it the Survival Protocol. The room fell silent. Let me get this straight, the President said slowly. The same information that horrified them is now what they want us to expand upon. Exactly, Jack nodded. With one key difference. They want us to teach their specialists how to think like humans in crisis situations. General Hart leaned forward, a gleam in her eye. So, they're admitting we're better at something than they are. At survival, yes, Jack confirmed. Their civilizations have been stable for so long that they've lost the edge that comes from constantly facing extinction. They've forgotten how to fight. And they expect this Andromeda contact to be hostile? Asked the Secretary of Defense. They don't know, Jack admitted. But they want to be prepared if it is. The Federation has grown complacent. They've admitted as much. Peace has made them vulnerable. President Clark stood and walked to the window, looking out at Lake Geneva. It's ironic. We finally make contact with an advanced, peaceful galactic civilization, and instead of teaching us to be more peaceful, they want us to teach them to be more human. More warlike, you mean, corrected the Chinese premier. More survivalist, Jack insisted. There's a difference. The President turned back to the room. What exactly does this teaching entail? They want to establish a human strategic academy, Jack explained. A place where Federation specialists can learn human military history, strategy, and crisis management. They want us to run war games, tactical simulations, and survival scenarios. General Hart couldn't contain a small smile. They want us to train them. Yes, Jack nodded. And in exchange, we get a modified membership and gradual technology transfers as we prove ourselves trustworthy. As we prove ourselves useful, you mean, the president said. Jack couldn't argue with that assessment. It's still an opportunity. 6 months later, the Human Strategic Academy had been established on Europa, Jupiter's ice-covered moon. The remote location had been chosen deliberately, far enough from Earth's population centers to ease Federation concerns about technology transfer, yet close enough to draw upon human expertise easily. Jack stood in the observation deck, watching as the first group of Federation students arrived. The alien delegates moved with visible discomfort in the higher gravity, despite the environmental adjustments made to accommodate their various physiologies. They looked terrified, noted Dr. Emma Wells, the Academy's chief educational coordinator. I don't think they expected humans to be quite so imposing, Jack nodded. The Federation representatives, accustomed to their peaceful existence, found themselves surrounded by what they considered the galaxy's most efficient survivors. Human military personnel staffed the facility, their disciplined movements and alert postures clearly unsettling to the visitors. Today's first lesson should be interesting, Jack said. General Hart insisted on starting with the Peloponnesian War. Ancient history? Why not something more recent? Emma asked. Her point exactly. She wants them to understand that human strategic thinking isn't just about technology. It's ingrained in our history. War hasn't fundamentally changed in thousands of years, only the tools have evolved. The first formal session began awkwardly. 30 Federation specialists sat in uncomfortable silence as General Hart displayed images of ancient Greek warfare. Hoplite warfare represents humanity's first systematic approach to organized combat, the general explained. The phalanx formation demonstrates a critical human innovation, the understanding that cohesion can overcome individual strength. Representative Trell raised an appendage. But why begin with killing techniques? Surely diplomatic solutions, because diplomacy works. Best when backed by strength, Hart interrupted. As your own Federation is now acknowledging by being here. The delegates exchanged uncomfortable glances. We're not teaching you to be conquerors, Jack added quickly. We're teaching you to survive. There's a distinction. Over lunch, a carefully prepared menu accommodating the various dietary requirements of the alien delegates, Jack overheard unsettling conversations. They've spent millennia perfecting the art of killing each other, one crystalline being whispered to another. How has their species not exterminated itself? Perhaps that is the lesson, replied the other. Their constant proximity to self-annihilation has made them uniquely resilient. By day's end, the Federation delegates had received a crash course in Greek warfare, Roman military organization, and medieval siege tactics. Their reactions ranged from disgusted to morbidly fascinated. As the delegates retired to their quarters, Vox approached Jack privately. This academy was my proposal to the council, they admitted. Many opposed it. I'm not surprised, Jack replied. You must understand our perspective, Vox continued. Your species developed nuclear weapons before achieving reliable space travel. You created artificial intelligence before solving basic resource allocation problems on your own planet. Your technological development has always outpaced your ethical evolution. Jack couldn't argue with that assessment. And yet, Vox added, you survive. Not despite your flaws, but perhaps because of them. Your species embraces risk in a way ours cannot comprehend. Is that a compliment? Jack asked. It is an observation, Vox replied. And the reason why, despite our horror at your starter kit, we need you. As the academy training progressed over the following months, something unexpected happened. The Federation delegates began to change. Though initially reluctant students, they gradually became more engaged, asking increasingly nuanced questions about human history and strategy. It's like watching pacifists discover they have teeth, Emma remarked to Jack as they observed a simulation exercise. On the training floor below, Federation specialists were participating in a recreation of the Battle of Cannae, with holographic armies clashing as alien delegates directed troop movements. Representative Moore, whose gaseous form shimmered with excitement within their containment orb, had proven particularly adept at strategic thinking. "Envelopment is key," they called to their team. "Draw their center forward while strengthening your flanks." Jack raised an eyebrow. "They're learning. Faster than we anticipated." "Too fast?" Emma asked. Jack considered the question. The Federation Council had been clear. They wanted their specialists trained in human survival thinking, but not to the point where they might become a threat themselves. The balance was delicate. "I don't think so," he finally replied. "They're embracing the concepts, but not the underlying aggression. They see this as purely theoretical." Later that day, Jack received an urgent message from Earth. The Federation's long-range sensors had detected unusual activity at the edge of the Andromeda Galaxy, activity that suggested deliberate probes into the Milky Way. The contact they feared might be happening sooner than expected, President Clark informed him during their secure call. The Federation Council is in emergency session. When Jack shared this news with the Academy's senior staff, General Hart's response was immediate. "We need to accelerate the training." "These delegates aren't soldiers," Emma protested. "They're scientists, diplomats, and researchers. We can't turn them into warriors overnight." "We don't need to," Jack realized. "We just need to help them think like survivors." The training regimen shifted. Instead of historical battles, the curriculum now focused on humanity's closest brushes with extinction. The Cuban Missile Crisis, the 1983 Soviet nuclear false alarm, the climate crisis of the 2030s, the AI containment challenges of the 2040s. These are scenarios where humanity faced destruction not from external threats, but from our own creations, Jack explained to the bewildered delegates. "And yet, we survived." "Through luck?" asked Representative Lin. "Through a combination of preparation, quick thinking, and yes, sometimes luck," Jack admitted. "But luck favors the prepared." The simulations grew more complex. Federation delegates were now placed in high-pressure scenarios requiring immediate decisions with incomplete information, the everyday reality of human crisis management. Most struggled, paralyzed by the imperfect choices presented to them. Their civilizations had evolved beyond such pressure points, creating decision-making systems that valued consensus and careful deliberation. Luxuries not available when facing extinction. "You must decide now," General Hart insisted during one particularly tense simulation of an imminent asteroid impact. "Every moment of deliberation costs millions of lives." "But we cannot be certain of the optimal solution," protested Trell. "Welcome onto being human," Hart replied grimly. "Certainty is a luxury we've rarely enjoyed." The Academy had been operating for nearly a year when the first genuine crisis erupted. An unidentified vessel had crossed into the Milky Way, bypassing Federation early warning systems. Its technology was unlike anything in Federation records, and it was heading directly toward a populated system near the galaxy's edge. Jack watched the Federation Council's emergency session via holographic link from Europa. The panic was evident. Representatives spoke over one another, proposed contradictory courses of action, and generally demonstrated exactly why they had sought human assistance. "The vessel has not responded to communication attempts," High Counselor Zinn reported. "Its trajectory will bring it to Navier Prime in approximately 12 standard days." "We should evacuate the planet," one representative suggested. "Impossible to evacuate 5 billion beings in 12 days, another countered. "We could assemble the defense fleet," offered a third. "Which hasn't seen actual combat in over 800 years, Vox reminded them. Then, to Jack's surprise, Vox continued, "I suggest we activate the Human Response Protocol." A murmur ran through the council chamber. "The humans have not been granted full membership," objected a reptilian delegate. "Their involvement in direct Federation security matters is unprecedented." "As is this situation," Vox countered. "We created the Academy specifically for scenarios like this." After heated debate, the council narrowly approved the measure. Within hours, Jack found himself and a select team from the Academy aboard the fastest Federation vessel, heading toward the potential confrontation. The ship, the Harmony's Shield, a recently commissioned defensive vessel, had been partially redesigned based on human suggestions. It remained primarily a diplomatic craft, but now carried defensive capabilities that would have been unthinkable in Federation design philosophy a year earlier. General Hart studied the sensor readings of the approaching vessel. Unusual configuration. Not obviously armed, but those protrusions could be weapon ports or simply sensor arrays. The Federation has sent 17 different communication attempts using universal mathematical sequences, reported Tom, who had joined the mission as communications specialist. No response. What would humans do in this situation? Asked Vox, who had joined the mission as the Council's representative. Historically, Hart replied, prepare for the worst, while hoping for the best. Position defensive assets, attempt communication, on all spectrums, and demonstrate capability without direct aggression. Jack nodded. We need to show strength without threatening them. It's a delicate balance. Like carrying a big stick while speaking softly, Tom added. Vox looked confused. I don't understand the reference. An old Earth diplomatic philosophy, Jack explained. Show that you're capable of defending yourself, but make it clear you prefer peaceful resolution. As they approached the intercept point ahead of the unknown vessel's arrival at Navier Prime, Jack proposed a controversial strategy. We position ourselves directly in their path, he suggested, pointing to the tactical display. Not as a blockade, but as a clear signal that we're aware of their presence and willing to engage, diplomatically or otherwise. That could be perceived as hostile, Vox worried. Less hostile than allowing them to approach a populated world unchallenged, Hart countered. If their intentions are peaceful, they'll recognize this as a security procedure, not aggression. And if they're not peaceful? Vox asked. Jack and Hart exchanged glances. Then we've given Navier Prime more time to prepare, Jack said quietly. The Harmony's shield positioned itself 3 light hours from Navier Prime, directly in the path of the approaching vessel. The crew, a mixture of Federation specialists and human advisors, maintained battle stations as tension mounted. Unknown vessel now within visual range, announced the sensor operator, a crystalline being whose facets flickered with nervous energy. The main view screen activated, showing a massive ship unlike any in Federation records. Its hull appeared to be composed of overlapping plates that shifted slightly, giving the impression of a living organism rather than a constructed vessel. Still no response to communications, Tom reported. Send the first contact mathematical sequence again. All frequencies, Jack ordered. Minutes stretched into hours as the vessel continued its approach without acknowledgement. At Jack's suggestion, the Harmony's shield maintained its position but powered up its defensive systems, a clear signal visible to any advanced scanning technology. They've adjusted course, the sensor operator suddenly announced. They're slowing. A ripple of relief passed through the bridge. They recognize our position as intentional, Hart observed. That's communication in itself. Suddenly the view screen flickered. Strange symbols appeared, shifting and changing in patterns that seemed almost fluid. They're responding. Tom leaned forward, studying the symbols. Not in any Federation language, but definitely structured communication. The ship's advanced AI began analyzing the patterns, searching for mathematical consistencies that might form the basis of translation. Minutes later, it offered a preliminary interpretation. We observe, you block. Purpose? Tom read aloud. Basic but clear. Jack considered their response carefully. Send this. We protect. You approach populated world. Your purpose unknown. Communication preferred. The exchange continued slowly, each message gradually becoming more complex as the translation matrix improved. The alien vessel, which identified itself as a pathfinder from the connected systems of Andromeda, explained that it was an exploratory craft, sent ahead of potential diplomatic contact. Why did you not respond to our earlier communications? Vox asked through the now functioning translation system. The response was unexpected. Your signals were categorized as natural phenomena. Your species communicate inefficiently. Jack couldn't suppress a small smile at the irony. The Federation, proud of its sophisticated communication protocols, had been essentially inaudible to the Andromedans. Over the next several days, preliminary diplomatic exchanges revealed that the Andromedans were indeed interested in peaceful contact. However, they operated on fundamentally different principles than Federation species. They valued direct demonstration over verbal assurance, action over declaration. They wouldn't have respected a purely diplomatic welcome, Jack explained during a private briefing with Vox. By positioning ourselves as a protective barrier, we spoke in terms they understood. A show of strength, Vox mused. How human. But effective, Jack pointed out. And no one got hurt. As arrangements were made for formal diplomatic contact on a neutral station, Vox approached Jack with news from the Federation Council. Your handling of this situation has impressed many who were skeptical about human involvement, they admitted. The Council has voted to accelerate Earth's integration into the Federation. The technology restriction protocol will be gradually lifted. Jack nodded, grateful but not surprised. And the Academy? Will be expanded, Vox confirmed. Though some still find human history disturbing, none can deny its utility now. Later, as Jack watched the Andromedan Pathfinder dock with the diplomatic station, he reflected on the strange irony of humanity's position. For centuries, humans had looked to the stars hoping to find advanced civilizations that might help them transcend their violent nature. Instead, they had found a galactic community that needed precisely those aspects of humanity they had hoped to outgrow. The humanity starter kit that had so horrified the Federation had ultimately proven to be exactly what the galaxy needed. A manual for survival from a species that had spent its entire existence on the brink of destruction, yet always found a way to endure. As formal introductions began between Federation representatives and the Andromedan delegates, Jack noticed how the Federation diplomats subtly positioned themselves, not in their traditional circular formation symbolizing equality, but in a protective stance before the representatives of less defended worlds. They had learned well, the galaxy was changing, and humanity, with all its flaws and survival instincts, was helping to shape that change. Not as conquerors, but as teachers of a hard-won wisdom. That peace is precious precisely because it isn't inevitable, and sometimes maintaining it requires the readiness to defend it. The very qualities that had horrified the Federation had become its salvation, and Earth's violent history had finally found a purpose beyond its own borders, ensuring that the stars would remain places of wonder and discovery, not conquest and destruction. For all their advanced technology and peaceful ideals, the Federation had lacked something only humanity could provide: the hard-earned wisdom of survivors.